Hey guys, tonight we step straight into the frozen silence of Karelia, a place where minus 30 degrees Celsius wasn't just a number on a thermometer, but the difference between life and death. Imagine standing in a forest where every tree groans under the weight of snow, where the air itself feels solid, and where even your breath freezes into crystals that sting your face. That's where we're going. And I should warn you, if you were actually there, you probably wouldn't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I always get a kick out of seeing viewers from Australia listening at dawn while someone in Canada is just falling asleep now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step out into Karelia's wilderness with a column of Finnish soldiers. The snow stretches endless, glistening under a weak moon, and every sound feels sharper because of the cold. Your rifle, your lifeline, and your burden presses against your gloved palms. Except the gloves are stiff, and the metal is so cold, it bites even through the fabric. Within minutes, it feels like the steel has fused with your skin. That weapon isn't going anywhere unless it takes a layer of you with it. The march has been going for hours, maybe days. You can't really tell anymore. Time itself seems to freeze out here. The rhythm of boots on snow is hypnotic. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Your body begs for sleep, eyelids fluttering like broken shutters in the wind. But stopping isn't an option. Out here, sleep could mean never waking up. And yet, exhaustion doesn't ask for permission. One soldier ahead of you sways slightly, his rifle angled like a crutch. His steps are automatic, as if his body has decided to keep moving while his brain checks out for a nap. You realize, with a jolt, that you're doing the same half-conscious, almost sleepwalking, except you're fully armed. There's a strange, almost comic thought. You're basically a sleep-deprived horse. Except instead of hay, you're chewing on frost and stale. Hardtack. This was the reality in Karelia during the Winter War and later campaigns. Finnish soldiers endured not just the enemy, but the kind of cold that could kill unprotected skin in minutes. Minus 30 degrees Celsius wasn't exceptional. It was Tuesday, and men had to march through it, often without proper winter gear, because supplies were limited and Finland was fighting against the odds. One mainstream historical fact here: the Finnish army, vastly outnumbered and outgunned by the Soviet Union, relied heavily on mobility and endurance. That meant marches so long and cold that they felt like tests designed by some cruel Nordic god of frost. The quirky detail: soldiers joked that their rifles were the best babysitters. Your hands froze to the gun. You couldn't drop it even if you passed out. It wasn't entirely a joke though. Frozen skin really could stick to steel, and sometimes that painful bond kept men upright when they might have toppled over. It was the ugliest version of multitasking. Your rifle served as both weapon and anti-sleep alarm. Historians still argue whether soldiers truly slept standing up, or whether they were in a kind of half-conscious trance, more like micro-sleeps than real slumber. Some veterans swore they had dreamed whole scenes while still upright on the march. Others insisted it was impossible to actually sleep while standing with a rifle frozen to your palms. The debate hasn't settled, but out here, in this moment, you know one thing: whatever this state is, it feels like both sleep and waking nightmare at the same time. The forest looms around you. Branches crack under frost, echoing like rifle fire in the night. You glance up, and the stars seem too bright, almost aggressive in their clarity. Your mind drifts, imagining them as lanterns hung by comrades who've gone ahead. Then your knees buckle slightly, and pain jolts you awake, your body's way of saying, "Nice try, but not today." You chuckle softly, the sound muffled by your scarf, thinking that if anyone saw you giggling at the sky, they'd probably assume the cold had cooked your brain. Every breath is a cloud. Every step is a decision not to give in. And yet, part of you marvels at the absurdity. Men, half asleep, rifles glued to their hands, marching through a frozen wilderness that could swallow entire battalions. You're not supposed to be here, not supposed to endure this, but here you are, trudging deeper into the night, one frozen step at a time. You keep walking. That's the whole secret now. Just keep walking. Don't think about minutes or hours, just the next crunch of your boots on snow. Your body feels like a machine programmed for one task only: place one foot ahead of the other. If you let your brain wander too far, the weight of exhaustion presses down, and the temptation to collapse becomes almost irresistible. The air is so dry and sharp, it burns in your lungs, and each inhale feels like swallowing needles. The scarf around your mouth is stiff with frozen breath, its edges rimmed in tiny icicles that rattle when you adjust it. Even blinking hurts. Your eyelashes are caked with frost, tiny white spikes that make the world shimmer in ghostly outlines. And through that blurry haze, you see your fellow soldiers trudging like silent ghosts. Nobody talks much. Words waste precious energy. Your rifle is still there, fused to your palms. The barrel is pointed skyward, and you've begun to think of it less as a weapon and more as a cruel partner on this endless march. Its weight is constant, unyielding, but familiar. The joke runs through your mind again. This gun isn't just your rifle. It's your walking stick, your handcuff, your babysitter. Drop it, and you'd probably fall straight into the snow and vanish. The rhythm of the march lulls you into a strange half-dream. You're still aware enough to avoid tripping over roots hidden beneath the snow, but your mind slips sideways. Suddenly, you imagine yourself back home. The smell of rye bread drifting from a kitchen stove, the warm crackle of a fire, your family's voices filling the room. It's so vivid that you almost stumble, snapping awake when your boot slams against a frozen clump of earth. For a split second, you're angry at the cold, angry at reality for ripping away the dream. But then you realize the dream itself was your body's way of clinging to sanity. Soldiers at the time often wrote later that they couldn't remember whether they'd actually slept or simply hallucinated during those endless marches. One mainstream fact here: in Karelia, long marches often lasted through the night, sometimes covering more than 30 kilometers without proper breaks. The Finnish military relied on constant movement to evade larger Soviet forces, which meant fatigue was a weapon as dangerous as bullets. The quirky detail: some men swore they could hear phantom music during the marches, tunes from home, snatches of church hymns, even accordion songs no one was actually playing. Whether it was the brain misfiring or some strange trick of the wind carrying distant sounds, no one knows. But enough soldiers reported it that the memory stuck, becoming a strange footnote in Finland's war stories. Men swaying half asleep, rifles frozen to their hands, trudging in rhythm to music that wasn't there. Historians still argue about how much of this was literal. Did men truly fall asleep while standing? Or was it a kind of micro-sleep, a few seconds of brain shutdown, while the body kept functioning like an autopilot? Some psychologists argue that under extreme fatigue, Humans can perform basic tasks unconsciously, almost like sleepwalking. Others insist the accounts are exaggerations, shaped by memory and storytelling years after the fact. But in this moment, none of that matters. For you, the line between sleep and wakefulness is so thin it could break at any second. The march continues. Snowflakes drift, light as dust, catching the faint glow of a pale moon. The forest is beautiful in a cruel way, endless black trunks streaked with white, stretching out like prison bars. You wonder if the Soviets are out there, somewhere beyond the tree line, watching you stumble like cattle. But then you remember, they're probably just as exhausted, just as frozen, just as human as you. It's a weird comfort, knowing that even the enemy might be suffering in the same way. Your boots are stiff, soles hard as wood. The felt liners inside have frozen solid, and every step feels like slamming your foot against stone. You wiggle your toes to remind yourself they're still attached, though numbness is spreading like a slow tide. Another soldier beside you mutters, something, maybe a curse, maybe a prayer. His voice is swallowed immediately by the wind, and he doesn't bother repeating it. Your mind drifts again, slipping between dream and reality. This time, you imagine you're lying in a sauna, steam rising around you, heat soaking into your bones. You can almost feel sweat bead on your forehead before a gust of icy air jerks you back into the moment. The cruel irony hits you. Even your imagination taunts you with warmth you can't have. Still, the march goes on, and through it, you start to recognize the strange solidarity of shared suffering. Nobody speaks, but every soldier understands what the others feel. Every step is a silent pact. If I keep going, you keep going. Nobody wants to be the one to collapse first. A light joke forms in your mind, maybe, if one of you does fall asleep standing up. The rest should stack firewood around him, pretending he's just another log in the pile. The thought makes you smile behind your frozen scarf. In conditions like this, humor is as vital as food. The night thickens, the cold presses harder, and yet you march. You realize that the rifle biting into your hands isn't just an anchor, it's a lifeline. As long as you can feel it, you're still awake, still alive, still moving, and that's enough for now. Your hands ache so badly you almost forget about your feet. The rifle's frozen steel seems to pulse against your palms, as though the weapon itself has a heartbeat. You clench harder, and the sharp sting sends a jolt through your nerves. In some perverse way, you welcome the pain. It reminds you you're still awake, still moving, still alive. Every soldier around you looks the same, hunched, pale shadows under wool caps, steam rising from their mouths like little chimneys. No one talks, no one dares. Even opening your mouth feels like an invitation for frostbite to sink its teeth into your lips. The silence is strange, heavy. Only the crunch of boots on snow and the occasional metallic clink of rifles rattling against belts breaks the monotony. You glance at the man to your right. His eyes are closed. His head bobs slightly rhythmically, like a bird perched in the wind, and yet he doesn't fall. His rifle, too, is fused to his hands, holding him upright like a frozen staff. You want to reach over, shake him awake, but what good would it do? He's not asleep in the normal sense. He's somewhere else entirely, drifting in that twilight zone where consciousness sputters like a candle in the wind. The question gnaws at you. Is he really sleeping, or just stuck in some weird trance, brain flickering on and off like an old lantern? Here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Psychologists later argued over whether humans can truly sleep standing up without collapsing. Horses can do it. Sure, they've got those neat, locking joints. Humans, not so much. Yet countless Finnish veterans swore it happened, swore they drifted into dreams while still upright. Historians still scratch their heads over it. Maybe it was microsleep, just seconds at a time. Or maybe, under such extremes, the body rewrites its own rules. A gust of wind barrels through the trees, nearly knocking you sideways. The cold is merciless, cutting through layers of wool as if you were wrapped in tissue paper. Your cheeks sting, your nose feels like it's missing, and your ears burn with a dull ache that promises frostbite. You shift your weight, and your boots crack the crust of ice hidden beneath the snow. The sound is sharp, like breaking glass. For a moment, you wonder if the ice will swallow you whole. The march continues, and your thoughts spiral in strange directions. You remember the rifle drills back in training camp, where instructors barked that your weapon was your closest friend. You'd rolled your eyes then. Now, it's literally true. The only thing keeping you upright is this hunk of frozen steel, this friend who hurts you and saves you at the same time. A cruel friend, a loyal one. One quirky detail soldiers liked to share years later. Sometimes their gloves froze, so solid to the rifle that they had to peel them off, leaving bits of cloth stuck to the barrel. A few even joked that if you wanted to tell who was most exhausted, you just looked for the guy whose hands had become part of the gun. In a way, it blurred the line between man and machine. Out here, you weren't just a soldier carrying a weapon, you were a weapon, stitched together by cold and willpower. Your head droops for a second, and you dream, yes, actually dream of a farmhouse. The smell of tar, the warmth of a cow stall, hay piled high like a feather bed. You feel yourself sink down into it, so relieved that you sigh aloud. Then your knees buckle. Your body snaps upright in panic, heart pounding. That haystack vanishes into the white void of Karelia's snow. You chuckle bitterly under your breath. Great, even your dreams are trying to trip you. A commander rides up on skis, scanning the column. His voice cuts through the night, sharp as the wind. Stay awake, stay moving. He knows the danger. If too many men surrender to sleep at once, the column could scatter, momentum lost, lives snuffed out by cold without a single bullet fired. The officer's dilemma is constant. Do they jolt men awake, or let them steal these standing half-naps? Force them, and they risk collapse. Let them drift, and maybe the march continues. It's a gamble, either way. The stars overhead blur again. This time, you imagine them as tiny fires burning for each man in the column, marking who's still awake, who's already fallen behind. You shake your head at the thought. You're no poet, but fatigue makes philosophers out of everyone, and maybe fools. To dot the rifle digs deeper into your palms. You flex your fingers, but they don't move much anymore. Stiff, frozen claws. The thought comes, what if I let go? What if I just drop it, curl up in the snow, and let sleep finally take me? The idea is strangely seductive, but another part of you rebels. No, dropping your rifle means dropping everything. You hold tighter. The march becomes a strange loops, no breath, rifle, snow, breath, rifle, rifle. Your mind drifts again to music. Yes, music. You could swear you hear a faint accordion somewhere behind you, maybe someone humming, but when you glance back, nobody's there, just the column of men, silent, locked in their frozen rhythm. Maybe it's in your head. Maybe it's real. Does it matter? And so you trudge on, half asleep, half awake, frozen hands bound to your rifle, eyes barely open. You've become part of this strange, silent procession through Karelia's night soldiers, standing, swaying, dreaming, yet still moving. And in that absurd, painful, almost impossible state, you realize this is what survival looks like. You sway slightly, your knees threatening to buckle, but the rifle steadies you. It's as though the weapon has grown roots into the snow, anchoring you upright while the rest of your body begs to sink into unconsciousness. Your eyelids drop like shutters in a windstorm. They close, open, close again. And each time you fight to lift them, it feels like hoisting sandbags. The march is less a line of men now, and more a procession of sleepwalkers. Each soldier drifts in his own private battle, heads lolling forward, rifles clutched like crosses at a midnight mass. It's Irian army of dreamers trudging forward, not entirely awake, not entirely asleep. The strangest thing, it works. Somehow, despite being on the brink of collapse, the column keeps its shape. No one falls outright. Not yet. The air is alive with noises you can't quite pin down. The wind hisses through the pines, carrying faint whines like voices from somewhere far away. A branch cracks, echoing like distant gunfire. For a heartbeat, you're certain you hear the low rumble of engines and panic flares Soviet armor. But it's nothing, only your imagination playing tricks. Or is it? Another soldier glances nervously in the same direction. Maybe he heard it too. Or maybe you're both just caught in the delirium of exhaustion. The truth is, this half-sleep makes the world unreliable. Historians later tried to describe it, but no textbook can quite capture the bizarre twilight state you find yourself in. Was it sleep? Was it delirium? Was it just the body's desperate way of shutting out the cold for moments at a time? One fact remains clear. Men survived marches that, on paper, should have killed them. The human body, it seems, rewrites its own rules under siege. You recall a conversation from weeks earlier in a warmer camp. Someone had joked that Finnish soldiers were like horses, they could sleep standing. Everyone had laughed then, poking fun at the absurdity. But here, with the rifle frozen to your palms and your body swaying like a drunkard's, you realize it wasn't a joke after all. You are, quite literally, living proof. A quirky memory surfaces. Someone once claimed he dreamt of eating sardines during a march. He woke to find he was chewing his scarf. Another swore he had balanced upright in the snow for a full hour without realizing he'd stopped walking. His comrades only noticed when they looped back and found him frozen still, eyes closed, but miraculously still breathing. Tales like these circulated long after the war, part comedy, part horror, but all testaments to how far the human body can bend without breaking. The cold is relentless, the kind that doesn't just bite skin, it seeps into bone, burrows into marrow. Your teeth chatter uncontrollably, but even that rhythmic clatter blends into the strange music of the march. Somewhere inside you, a tiny ember of willpower insists on staying lit. Maybe it's stubbornness, maybe it's fear, or maybe it's that Finnish concept of sisuth, untranslatable word for grit, guts, endurance, whatever keeps you moving when logic says you shouldn't. The rifle digs into your palms again. You imagine it as a companion rather than a burden. You whisper to it in your head, "Don't let me go." It's funny, really. You hated cleaning this thing in camp, cursed every jammed round, every icy bolt. Now, in this moment, you're grateful for its cold, cruel solidity. It's the one thing that keeps you upright when your body wants nothing more than to collapse. The column halts. For a moment, an officer's signal you barely register. Some men lean on their rifles, eyes closed, swaying like reeds. One nearly falls, but two comrades catch him, steady him, and without a word, he resumes standing. There's no discussion, No lectures, just quiet understanding. Everyone knows how thin the line is between rest and death. One mainstream historical fact: the Winter War's marches were infamous even among the Finns themselves. Soldiers often had to cover incredible distances in punishing cold, moving through forests and over frozen lakes without proper sleep for days. This wasn't a one-off nightmare. It was routine, and yet, despite being vastly outnumbered, the Finns managed to outmaneuver Soviet forces again and again. The marches terrible as they were kept Finland in the fight. You find your mind drifting again. Hallucinations creeping into the edges of vision. The trees blur, becoming tall wooden houses. The moonlight scatters across the snow, making it look like hearth fire on polished floors. For a moment, you almost believe you're home. You imagine your mother setting out bread on the table, steam rising from a pot. The comfort is so intense that your knees buckle. Pain snaps you awake again, and you laugh softly, bitterly, at your own brain's cruelty. Even hallucinations are booby-trapped here. And then comes the historian's open debate. Some argue that these stories are exaggerated folklore born in the retelling. Soldiers making themselves into legends after the war. Could men really march half asleep, rifles glued to their hands for miles at a time? Skeptics say no, pointing out that memory in extreme conditions is notoriously unreliable. Others argue that precisely because conditions were so extreme, the impossible became possible. Maybe science hasn't caught up with what desperation and cold can force the body to do. Maybe the stories aren't myths at all. You shift your rifle again, trying to ease the pressure on your palms, but the weapon refuses to budge. Your fingers have gone so stiff that the gun feels like it's grafted onto your hands. Part of you worries, will I ever be able to let go? But another part clings to the reassurance. If it's stuck, then you won't drop it. And if you don't drop it, you won't fall. The night drags on. Stars blur overhead. The forest creaks and whispers. And you, along with dozens of half-dreaming comrades, march on through Karelia's frozen darkness, men, suspended between wakefulness and sleep, living proof of endurance that defies easy explanation. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a strange thought flickers. Perhaps you'll remember this night not as suffering, but as proof that you could keep going, even when every part of you wanted to stop. Your body is swaying again, but you've stopped fighting it. At some point, you realize that resistance only wastes more energy, and energy is the most precious currency out here. So you let yourself drift, the rifle tethering you upright like a mast in a storm. The snow crunches under your boots, but the sound comes from far away, as if you're listening through a wall of ice. The strangest thing about this half-sleep is how vivid the dreams are. They don't feel like quick flashes. They feel like entire worlds. One moment you're trudging through Karelia, and the next you're standing barefoot on a wooden dock in summer, toes dangling in lake water that ripples with golden sunlight. You can smell pine resin, hear laughter, see your cousins splashing water with a paddle. It's so real that your frozen rifle feels absurd in your hands. Why would you be holding a weapon at the lake? The thought is enough to snap you awake, back into the night, back into the bite of minus 30 degrees Celsius air. It's unsettling, these dream intrusions. You can't trust your own mind anymore. One soldier swears he saw his wife standing on the trail ahead, beckoning him. Another insists the trees whispered songs. And there was that time you caught yourself talking aloud, holding an entire conversation with no one. The others didn't laugh. They were too busy having their own strange episodes. The whole column, it seems, is caught between two worlds, one of snow and survival, the other of memory and imagination. This is where the eerie silence of the march becomes its own character. During the day, maybe men would joke, complain, or swap stories. But now, at night, when exhaustion cuts through every muscle, there are no words left, only breathing, only boots on snow, only rifles rattling faintly against straps. It's a soundscape both comforting and terrifying. Comforting, because you're not alone. Terrifying, because everyone seems like ghosts. One mainstream fact: the Finnish marches were legendary for their discipline. Even while half asleep, men managed to stay in formation, rifles ready, steps aligned. It was part training, part necessity. Falling behind wasn't just embarrassing, it could be deadly. A man alone in Karelia's forests at night had little chance of surviving. Wolves, frostbite, or disorientation could end him before sunrise. That knowledge alone seemed to keep men tethered to the group, even while their minds drifted into dreams. The quirky detail: some veterans later joked that they had developed standing dreams so specific that they could predict them. One claimed he always dreamed of saunas, another of rye bread, another of fishing on a summer lake. They laughed about it years later, but at the time, these hallucinations were deadly traps. A dream of warmth might trick your body into trying to sit down, to curl up in snow that looked like a featherbed. Those who gave in rarely woke, and here's where historians still argue. Were these upright dreams truly a kind of sleep, or were they hallucinations born of extreme deprivation? Some researchers suggest the brain, starved of rest, tries to slip into REM cycles even while awake, creating waking dreams. Others dismiss the idea as embellishment, soldiers' tales, as one scholar put it. But for those who lived it, the debate is meaningless. You don't care whether it's technically sleep or not. You just know you've been somewhere else for a few seconds. While your body trudged on without you, the man in front of you stumbles. His head dips, knees folding slightly. He's about to go down. But two men flank him, each grabbing an arm, hoisting him upright without a word. It's automatic. You realize this has been happening all along, soldiers propping up their comrades like puppets, unwilling to let anyone fall. It's not about compassion, exactly. It's about survival. One man down could slow the whole line, draw attention, waste time. So you don't let him fall. You keep him moving, because keeping him moving keeps you moving too. Your hands throb, though hands feels like the wrong word now. They're blocks of frozen wood clamped to steel. The rifle's barrel scrapes your sleeve, the sound metallic and raw. You wonder whether your skin has fused permanently to the weapon. Maybe, come morning, you'll need a knife to separate yourself. You imagine writing home about it. Dear mother, don't worry, I am doing well. My rifle and I are now married. The joke makes you snort into your scarf, and the sound is ridiculous in the silence. A few men glance at you, hollow-eyed, but no one says a word. Humor is fragile here, but it helps. The march stretches on, endless. You try to track the stars, but even the sky blurs now. At times, you're not sure if you're still moving forward or just stuck in place, legs pumping in some endless loop. Maybe you've been marching in circles for hours. Maybe this forest is endless. Maybe you'll never stop. And yet, a strange calm settles over you. Yes, you're exhausted. Yes, you're freezing. Yes, your body screams for rest. But you realize something. You've been here for hours already. If you've made it this far, maybe you can make it farther. The body is weaker than you thought, but also stronger than you imagined. Maybe the human spirit really does bend without breaking. You shift your rifle again, letting its cold bite remind you you're alive. The march continues, Men drifting like shadows through Karelia's frozen night, each one locked in a private battle against sleep. You're part of it now. No different, no better. Just another figure swaying with exhaustion, carried forward by discipline, stubbornness, and a weapon that refuses to let go. The night deepens, and the silence becomes heavier, almost suffocating. You realize that the absence of sound is its own kind of noise. The forest doesn't care about your suffering. The wind only carries reminders of how endless this march feels. And yet, if you listen closely, you notice something beneath it, all a rhythm. The men breathe in unison, their boots crunch in time, and the faint clatter of rifles creates a sort of accidental lullaby. That lullaby is dangerous. Its steady beat makes your eyelids droop again. The sound is hypnotic, coaxing you to drift, to let your body sink into that liminal space between awareness and nothingness. For a few terrifying seconds, you realize you have drifted. Your head dips, your knees bend, and you jerk upright with a gasp. A couple of soldiers ahead of you do the exact same thing, an army of men snapping awake like marionettes, tugged by invisible strings. You catch yourself smiling at the absurdity. 100 men marching through a frozen wilderness, all half asleep, all waking in the same rhythm. It's like some bizarre synchronized performance. You want to laugh, but laughter takes air, and air hurts your lungs. So the chuckle stays trapped in your throat. There are no words spoken, but you sense the same struggle in every soldier. You wonder what dreams are tugging at their eyelids. Are they seeing their childhood homes? Are they back in summer fields, swinging scythes under warm sun? Or are they, like you, imagining beds, saunas, and bread ovens so vividly that the ache in their stomachs deepens? The eerie thing is how ordinary it all looks. From a distance, you'd see nothing unusual, just a column of soldiers moving through snow. But if you stepped closer, you'd notice the details. The way men's eyes flutter shut, the way their bodies sway, the occasional muttered words from lips cracked and frozen. You'd realize this isn't just a march. It's a fight against nature, against exhaustion, against the body's deepest instincts. A mainstream historical fact underscores the stakes during the Winter War. Finnish soldiers often marched through the night to avoid Soviet patrols. They were masters of mobility, using skis and endurance to keep ahead of larger enemy forces. But that mobility came at a brutal cost. Entire battalions pushed themselves past human limits, sometimes marching for more than 20 hours, with little more than frozen bread in their stomachs. The cold was as much an enemy as the Soviets. And then there's the quirky side of it. Soldiers sometimes snored while marching. Yes, snored tiny bursts of sound as their throats rattled while they swayed half asleep. The first time someone heard it, they thought the man was choking. But no, he was just sleep snoring while upright, moving forward in perfect rhythm. Others swore they'd seen comrades dream with their eyes open, their gazes locked on nothing, lips twitching as if whispering to invisible companions. These were the kinds of stories veterans told decades later, half proud, half bewildered that such things had really happened. But scholars still argue over it. Could a human truly enter sleep while walking, especially in temperatures so deadly? Or were these episodes simply hallucinations, symptoms of exhaustion and hypothermia, rather than sleep itself? Some researchers insist the brain can only simulate the feeling of dreaming without actually entering restorative rest. Others argue that microsleep brief lapses, lasting seconds, can mimic the sensation of full dreams. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. And out here in Karelia, theory doesn't matter. The reality is that men drifted, dreamed, and somehow kept moving. You shift your grip on the rifle, though grip feels like the wrong word. Your hands aren't gripping anymore, they're welded to the gun. The pain that once stung has dulled into a numb throb. You know that if you peeled off the gloves right now, you'd find skin torn and raw. And yet you cling to that pain because it proves you're still awake. One soldier in front stumbles badly, nearly face-planting into the snow. His buddy catches him, slaps him lightly across the cheek, and they keep moving. Nobody laughs. Nobody scolds. It's just another unspoken rule. If your comrade falters, you steady him, not out of friendship, but out of necessity. Every man who stays upright keeps the column intact, keeps the momentum alive. The march only works if no one allows collapse to become contagious. You wonder what the Soviets would think if they saw you now. Would they laugh, seeing their enemies stumbling and swaying like drunks? Or would they be unsettled, realizing that even on the brink of collapse, the Finns refused to stop? There's a certain madness to it, but maybe that madness is the point. To survive here, you need to be a little unhinged. Your mind drifts again. This time, you're certain you hear music. Not just faint notes, but a full tuna jaunty accordion melody, the kind you'd hear at a village dance. It's so clear, you actually start moving your head in rhythm. But then the wind shifts, and the music vanishes, replaced by the hollow moan of trees. You mutter to yourself, "Good one," and keep moving. No one reacts. Maybe they've got their own phantom songs playing. Another gust blasts snow into your face, sharp as glass shards. You curse under your breath, the sound muffled by your scarf. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue feels like leather. You remember the warm taste of coffee back home, bitter and comforting. The memory alone nearly makes you weep. You wonder how many soldiers around you are crying silently, tears freezing before they even fall. And then you think about the strangest thing. Years from now, people will argue about whether this really happened. They'll sit in warm libraries, writing papers, sipping tea, debating if men could really sleep while standing with frozen rifles. And you want to laugh, because you know the truth isn't clean or scientific. The truth is what you're living now, the human body, broken and desperate, finding impossible ways to keep moving. The march stretches on, endless. Stars shift overhead. The forest creaks like an old house. And through it all, you and your comrades keep swaying, keep dreaming, keep surviving. It's absurd. It's heroic. It's terrifying. It's just another night in Karelia. The commander skis alongside the line again, his lantern swinging slightly, throwing patches of pale light across the snow. You catch his silhouette moving back and forth like a shepherd checking on half-conscious sheep. He doesn't shout this time. He just observes, occasionally tapping a man's shoulder, nodding when he sees eyes flutter open. There's no energy left for speeches. The unspoken order is clear enough. Don't fall. Don't stop. You wonder what it must feel like to be him wide awake, maybe warmed by the constant movement of skiing, watching dozens of men drift on the edge of collapse. Does he feel pity, frustration, or is he just calculating, weighing whether letting men sleep upright is worth the risk of losing them? That's the dilemma for any leader here. Wake a man, and you might break him. Leave him dreaming, and maybe he marches another hour. The column crests a low ridge. For a moment, the forest opens, and you see the horizon glowing faintly moonlight, scattering across an expanse of snow that stretches farther than your imagination wants to follow. It's beautiful in a way, stark and endless, like walking across a frozen ocean. But beauty is cruel here. That open space offers no shelter, no warmth, no promise of rest, just more snow. More distance. The man ahead of you mutters something, his voice thick with sleep. You lean closer, thinking he might be addressing you, but his words are nonsense. Fragments of a dream leaking out. He chuckles, then goes quiet again. You feel a pang of unease. Dreaming while walking is one thing, but laughing at ghosts only you can see. That's another level of exhaustion entirely. Mainstream fact. Finnish officers reported that men sometimes fell into these dream states so deeply that they didn't respond to commands right away. An entire squad might march half a kilometer before realizing they had no memory of it. That blank stretch was both terrifying and oddly efficient. Your body covering ground while your mind hid somewhere safer, a quirky detail. One soldier swore he dreamed of buttered bread, so real that when he woke, his mouth was moving in chewing motions. Another claimed he saw reindeer trotting alongside the march, bells jingling merrily, only to blink and find nothing but skeletal birch trees. These weren't stories made for entertainment. They were confessions, men admitting how close they'd come to surrendering to illusions, and historians, they still bicker. Some argue these dream marches are evidence of microsleeper-proven neurological phenomenon, where the brain shuts down briefly, slipping into dreamlike imagery. Others argue it's just hallucination from fatigue and frostbite, not true sleep. The debate gets tangled because memory itself is unreliable. Veterans recalled these nights decades later, and who can say what was memory and what was embellishment? But again, out here, definitions don't matter. The march is real. The rifle, frozen to your palms, is real. The bone-deep fatigue is real. And that's enough. The cold tightens its grip. Every joint aches. Your knees feel like hinges rusted stiff. Your back screaming with each step. And yet, you keep moving, partly because you have to, partly because the man in front of you does. You're tethered to him in spirit. If he keeps going, so will you. The same chain binds you to the man behind you. It's not loyalty to country or orders in this moment. It's loyalty to the rhythm itself. The stubborn refusal to break the line. Snow drifts down, soft at first, then heavier, each flake sticking to your cap, your shoulders, your rifle barrel. You feel the weight accumulate, absurdly delicate, yet crushing in its persistence. The snow muffles the sounds of marching even more, wrapping the world in a cocoon of white silence. For a brief moment, it almost feels peaceful, like walking inside a snow globe. But peace is an illusion. You know better. The snow is another layer of exhaustion, another test. Your head dips again, and this time the dream is darker. You see yourself lying in the snow, finally still, finally resting. The thought is so seductive that you nearly stop walking. But the man behind bumps into you, jolting you forward, breaking the spell. You mutter a quick thanks under your breath, though he doesn't hear. In this world, even accidents save lives. The rifle digs deeper into your palms. You test your grips, still solid. You think again of the strange marriage between soldier and weapon. The steel that once burned you now feels fused, inseparable. In a way, the rifle has become your backbone. Without it, you'd fold. With it, you sway but never fall. You chuckle again, imagining a joke told years later. We didn't carry rifles, they carried us. Above you, the stars blur and spin. The world tilts, and for a terrifying second, you're certain you're falling sideways into the sky. You gasp, shake your head, blink hard, and the stars settle back into place. Hallucination or dream, who can tell? All that matters is you're still standing, still marching. Hours slip by. You no longer track time by clocks or distances. You track it by the number of times you nearly collapse and the number of times you catch yourself. That's your calendar now. Your diary is written in steps, not words. And so the column moves deeper into Karelia's night. A band of half-dreaming men, rifles fused to frozen hands, trudging forward through silence and snow. No songs, no speeches. Only breath, boots, and the eerie knowledge that survival depends on this strange ability to sleep while awake, to dream while moving. The march feels endless now. You don't measure progress by distance anymore, but by sensations, your rifle shifting slightly, your knees stiffening, the way frost creeps higher on your scarf. Every few minutes, you blink awake, realizing you've just lost track of time again. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes. The line keeps moving, so you do too, trapped in its current like driftwood in a frozen river dot. Your brain rebels. It's desperate for rest, and so it steals moments. Just a few seconds here and there, closing down functions like a machine rationing power. You know you're walking, but you don't remember doing it. You know you're awake, but you also know you weren't fully here a moment ago. It's unsettling. This fractured reality, like flipping through pages of a book, but missing entire chapters. A soldier beside you mumbles. His eyes are closed, his mouth twitching as though he's deep in conversation. You strain to hear and realize he's speaking to his wife, for at least the version of her that exists in his dream. He mutters about bread, about her smile, about warmth. His tone is gentle, loving, utterly at odds with the frozen nightmare around him. Then his head jerks upright, and he gasps as though waking from underwater. Without a word, he keeps walking. Nobody teases him. Nobody dares. The silence is only broken by these strange sounds, mutters, gasps, the occasional startled snore. Yes, snore. You hear it clearly. One of the men is actually snoring while marching, his throat rattling with each exhale. It's absurd, almost funny. And for a moment, you feel like laughing. But laughter takes energy, and energy is a luxury you can't afford. Here's the mainstream fact. Microsleeps are a documented phenomenon. Even modern drivers, exhausted on highways, drift for seconds without realizing it. During the war, soldiers experienced this on foot. Unlike a car, the body kept moving forward automatically. Training, rhythm, and sheer habit kept the legs pumping even when the mind switched off. That's why so many Finnish veterans later swore they had slept upright, their rifles anchoring them while their bodies marched on. A quirky detail. Some men recalled dreaming so vividly of food that they could actually taste it. One veteran insisted he woke from a march with the memory of butter melting on his tongue. Another described hearing the crackle of bacon, though none of them had seen meat for weeks. Hunger and exhaustion wove together, tricking their senses into cruel illusions. And of course, scholars still debate what all this means. Was it true sleep or just hallucination? Were the men actually resting, however briefly, or were their brains simply malfunctioning under stress? Some psychologists argue that such half-dreams are protective, giving the body microbursts of recovery. Others dismiss the idea entirely, saying that men may have exaggerated memories decades later, blurring truth and legend. But here, tonight, you don't care what historians will say. You know only this: you drift, you dream, and somehow you keep moving. The snow deepens. Each step is heavier now, the crust breaking with a crunch that echoes like glass. Your boots are blocks of ice, your socks stiff, your toes so numb you half expect them to be gone. You try not to think about it. You try not to picture what might happen when you finally take your boots off. Better not to know. Your rifle shifts again, the barrel icy against your sleeve. You tighten your grip, though your fingers barely respond anymore. Their claws, frozen stiff, more part of the weapon than part of you. You imagine, absurdly, that the rifle is carrying you rather than the other way around. It's a dark joke, but one that makes sense out here. You don't hold the rifle holds you. Another man stumbles. His knees buckle, and he's about to fall face first into the snow when two comrades grab his arms, dragging him upright. He doesn't resist. He doesn't even thank them. He just keeps walking, his eyes half shut, his breath ragged. You see this again and again, men saving each other without words, as though keeping someone vertical is as instinctive as breathing. The cold cuts deeper. It's no longer just your skin that suffers. It's your bones, your chest, your very breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Each breath feels like swallowing knives. And still you march. Still you sway. Still you dream. Your vision blurs again, and suddenly the snow becomes feathers, soft and inviting. You imagine falling into it, sinking into a pillow that will cradle you until morning. The temptation is almost unbearable. You slow, your knees weakening, ready to give in. But then the man behind bumps into you, jolting you forward, breaking the illusion. You gasp, curse softly, and keep walking. That accidental shove may have saved your life. The absurdity of it all dawns on you. An entire army, swaying half asleep through Karelia, rifles welded to their hands, dreams colliding with reality. It's both tragic and comical. You imagine someone painting it years later not as a scene of horror, but as a surreal, almost cartoonish tableau. And maybe that's how it will be remembered. Half nightmare, half legend. Your head tilts back, and you stare at the stars. They blur and spin, dizzying. For a moment, you think you're falling upward, tumbling into the sky. Panic seizes you, and you snap your head down, grounding yourself in the snow, in the march, in the rifle biting into your palms. You whisper under your breath, "Not tonight." The march continues. No one speaks, no one dares. But together, half awake, half dreaming, you move forward through Karelia's frozen wilderness, proving once again that survival isn't always about strength or skill. Sometimes, survival is about stubbornness, the refusal to stop, even when your own body begs for surrender. The word Sisu drifts through your mind like a half-remembered prayer. Everyone talks about it, but nobody can quite define it. It isn't just courage or stubbornness or willpower. It's all of those things at once, and something more, a refusal to give in, even when every sensible part of you screams to stop. Tonight, in Karelia's brutal cold, Sisu is the only thing keeping you upright. Your body has become an enemy. Each muscle screams, each joint creaks like rusted machinery. Your back is a knot of pain, your shoulders carved from stone. Your legs move automatically, not because you command them, but because the rhythm is stronger than thought. And your hands, your poor, frozen hands, are nothing but claws wrapped around steel. The rifle is your tormentor and your salvation. Without it, you'd have collapsed long ago. With it, you stay rooted, however unwillingly, in the world of the living. Its weight is punishing. Its metal burns like fire through the gloves. But you need it. You rely on it. You even whisper to it now, under your breath, absurdly grateful. "Don't let me go," you mutter. The words vanish into your scarf, unheard by anyone else. Around you, the other soldiers are the same. Ghostly figures swaying, eyes half shut, breaths ragged. No one speaks, no one dares. But in that silence, you feel an odd unity. Each man is alone in his suffering, yet tied to the rest by this invisible rope of stubbornness. The line moves as one, and as long as it moves, you belong to it. Mainstream fact: Finland's army, despite being vastly outnumbered, became infamous for its endurance. Their marches weren't optional, they were strategy. Soviet units relied on bulk and machinery. The Finns relied on mobility and terrain knowledge. That meant skiing or trudging across impossible distances, often in sub-zero conditions. Exhaustion was a constant, an uninvited companion that could kill as surely as any bullet. The quirky detail: soldiers would sometimes joke that the forest itself marched with them. The tall, snow-covered trees seemed to sway in time with their steps, like silent comrades. One man later claimed he saluted a pine, thinking it was his commanding officer. Another swore he'd seen a bear trudging alongside the column, only to realize it was a fellow soldier wrapped in a fur coat. The cold and fatigue made fools of everyone. And then, as always, the scholars step in with debate. Was it really sisu that kept men going, or was it sheer biology, adrenaline, and desperation overriding normal human limits? Some argue that the romantic idea of sisu was invented after the fact, a national myth to explain survival. Others insist it was real, a cultural force as tangible as hunger or cold. The truth is slippery, caught between science and story. But standing here, swaying in the snow, with your rifle glued to your palms, you know one thing: whatever name you give it, something keeps you upright when you should have fallen hours ago. The cold sharpens suddenly, a gust of wind knifing through the forest. It feels like a hand pressing against your chest, daring you to stop. You hunch lower, pressing forward. Your scarf is a block of ice, your breath cracking against it. You lick your lips and taste blood where the skin has split. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. Cracks heal. Sleep is worse. Sleep means stillness. Stillness means the snow will swallow you whole. Ahead, a soldier slips. He stumbles to his knees, his rifle clattering, and for a heartbeat, you think he's done. But to others, grab him under the arms, dragging him back to his feet before he has the chance to surrender. He doesn't speak. He doesn't even look ashamed. He just resumes walking, as if nothing happened. The moment passes like a sigh. The column doesn't stop. Your eyes close again, and a vision sweeps over you. You're sitting by a lake, fishing rod in hand, the water calm and glistening. The sun warms your face, and your fingers are free, no rifle weighing them down. You actually feel the tug of a fish on the line. It's so real you almost shout in triumph. Then your boot catches on a root, and you stumble, the dream shattering like glass. You grunt, shake your head, and keep walking. The lake is gone. The cold remains. You start counting steps, desperate for something to focus on. 1, 2, 3, 4. You make it to 50 before losing track, your mind wandering again. You curse under your breath and start over. 1, 2, 3. The numbers are meaningless, but they tether you, keep you from drifting too far into dreams. Somewhere behind, a man lets out a broken laugh. It startles you. It's so rare to hear humor here. Maybe he saw something in his dream. Maybe he just went mad for a second. No one questions it. Laughter, even strange and cracked, is better than silence. The night feels eternal, but the march doesn't falter. Step after step, breath after breath, dream after dream. You don't know how much farther you have to go, and you don't ask. Distance has no meaning anymore. There's only forward. And so you keep moving, rifle frozen to your hands, body begging for rest, mind slipping between dreams and wakefulness. You tell yourself this is sisu, or biology, or madness. Maybe all three. Whatever it is, it works. You're still standing. You're still moving. And that, tonight, is victory enough. The column drags itself deeper into the forest, a line of shadows moving without sound. You've stopped thinking about time. Hours, minutes, even seconds blur together into one long stretch of white and black, cold and pain. The only measure of progress is survival. You're still upright, still moving, still breathing frost into the air. Your eyes close again, just for a heartbeat, and suddenly you're somewhere else. You're in a wooden cabin, the fire roaring, the smell of birch logs thick in the air. A mug of hot coffee warms your hands. The dream is so vivid, it makes you gasp with pleasure. But then you blink, and the cabin dissolves, replaced by endless snow and the cruel reality of your rifle burning into your palms. You almost laugh at the cruelty of each your own brain-dangling comfort in front of you, like bait, then ripping it away. The soldier beside you whispers something, his voice barely audible. You lean closer. "Wake me if I fall," he mutters, and then his eyes close completely. He doesn't stumble. He just keeps walking, asleep or something close to it, his rifle stiff across his chest. You nod, though he doesn't hear, and you realize you're all watching each other now. Each man is both guard and guardian, making sure the line stays intact, making sure dreams don't swallow anyone whole. Mainstream fact. Many veterans later admitted that their comrades saved them countless times, not from bullets, but from the temptation to lie down. In Karelia's night, sleep itself was the enemy. Men would shake each other, shout, even slap faces raw to keep from losing one another to the snow. And still, there were those who slipped away, too tired to fight anymore. The quirky side of it. Some soldiers swore that when men slept standing, they actually snored in rhythm with their boots, the sound blending into the march. Others remembered leaning against comrades like fence posts, forming a chain of swaying bodies that kept each man upright. One veteran later said, "We weren't marching, we were sleepwalking together, and somehow it worked." Of course, historians have their doubts. Some argue that memory can romanticize suffering, turning half-truths into full legends. Did entire squads really march while dreaming, rifles frozen to their hands? Or were these moments just fragments of exhaustion, misremembered in the haze of years? Skeptics insist that human bodies can't sleep standing upright without collapsing. Yet the stories persist, too many and too consistent to dismiss outright. The truth may live somewhere between science and myth. As truths often do, the march continues, and the silence grows heavy again. Only the forest speaks, branches cracking, snow shifting, the distant cry of some animal. Wolves, maybe. Or maybe just the wind playing tricks. You pull your scarf higher, though it's frozen stiff, and remind yourself to breathe. Inhale, exhale. Keep moving. That's all you have. The stars above shimmer, mocking in their brightness. They seem so close, so warm, like lanterns strung up in the sky by a careless hand. You imagine reaching up and plucking one down, cradling it in your frozen palms to thaw your skin. You almost believe it's possible until the rifle digs in again, cold and merciless, snapping you back. Another man stumbles hard. This time, he falls to his knees, his rifle clattering into the snow. For a terrifying second, no one moves. Then 2 soldiers haul him up by his arms, pressing the rifle back into his hands. He doesn't resist, doesn't even look embarrassed. He just keeps walking, eyes half closed, mouth slack. The column moves on, as if nothing happened. You realize this is the unspoken rule. No man is allowed to collapse alone. You drag each other forward, not because you're heroes, but because you're bound together. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and in this night, weakness is contagious, so you don't allow it. You keep everyone upright, even if you have to carry them with your eyes closed. Your head dips again, and this time the dream is sweeter. You see a sauna, steam swirling, benches warm under your skin. The heat melts every ache, every frozen finger. You sigh in relief. For one blissful moment, you're home. Then your shoulder slams into a tree trunk, jolting you awake, and the dream evaporates like mist. You grunt in pain, but secretly you're grateful. Better a bruise than eternal sleep. The absurdity strikes you again. An army marching half asleep, rifles glued to hands, swaying like reeds in the wind. If anyone painted the scene, it would look surreal, half nightmare, half comedy. Men aren't supposed to endure this. And yet, here you are. You mutter under your breath, just one more step, then another, then another. That becomes your prayer, your mantra. You don't think about the end of the march. You don't think about the next day, the next battle, the next anything. You just think about the next step, and somehow, impossibly, it keeps you moving. The forest thickens again, trees closing in like dark walls. The snow swallows the sound of marching, making it feel as though you're walking in a dream. Maybe you are. Maybe you never left. Maybe the whole war is a dream, and you'll wake tomorrow to birdsong and sunlight on your pillow. The thought is tempting, dangerous, but you chase it away. Dreams are cruel here. The only truth is cold steel in your palms and snow beneath your boots. And so the march goes on. Men sleepwalking through Karelia, half alive, half dreaming, tied together by rifles, frost, and the sheer stubborn will not to stop. Whatever historians decide later, you know what's real tonight? The sound of boots in snow, the sting of frozen breath, the rifle anchoring you against the darkness. The rifle in your hands has become more than a weapon. Now it's a lifeline, a post hammered into the frozen earth, holding you vertical when everything inside you wants to crumble. The cold makes the metal bite, but in that bite is safety. If you could let go, you would fall. And if you fell, you might never rise again. So the rifle stays, and you stay with it, locked together in misery and survival. You think back to training, when instructors shouted about discipline. Your rifle is your closest friend. You had rolled your eyes then, muttering under your breath about cleaning drills and endless inspections. Now though, the words feel prophetic. The rifle isn't just your friend, it's your jailer, your crutch, your backbone. In some dark way, it's the reason you're still alive. All around you, the same scene plays out. Soldiers swaying, rifles fused, two hands, eyes closed but feet moving. The line keeps its shape, even in this half-dream state. It's eerie, almost ritualistic, as if the forest itself has bewitched you all into one body. You glance to the side and catch a soldier's head drooping. For a moment, he looks like he's bowing in prayer. Then he straightens suddenly, as if waking from a nightmare. The march continues. Mainstream fact: weapons often froze during these marches. Bolts locked, barrels frosted over, magazines stiff with ice. Soldiers had to warm their rifles, undercoats, or breathe into chambers to keep them functional. But the irony was brutal. While the rifles failed as weapons, they succeeded as anchors, keeping men upright when their own muscles betrayed them. The quirky detail: some men later joked that their rifles had chosen them, as if the weapons themselves decided who would stay on their feet. Veterans told stories of comrades whose rifles seemed to hold them up like walking sticks. Others laughed about waking to find their gloves ripped, bits of fabric stuck to the barrel. "The gun didn't want me to leave," one man said decades later. with a smile that wasn't entirely a joke. Of course, historians wrestle with these tales. Were the rifles truly lifelines, or is that an invention of memory, a way to turn suffering into story? Some argue the accounts exaggerate, painting an image too poetic to be literal. Others counter that desperation blurs the line between truth and metaphor. Maybe the rifles didn't choose, but in those nights, they felt like companions, more loyal than flesh and blood. Your palms are throbbing now, though numbness has dulled the edge. You try to flex your fingers, but the effort is pitiful. They don't obey. The thought hits you. If the rifle slipped, you wouldn't be able to grab it back. Your hands are too stiff, too far gone. The gun and your palms are fused in a partnership neither of you asked for. You whisper again, softly, absurdly, "Don't drop me." The line shuffles forward. A soldier ahead stumbles, his rifle slipping sideways. His comrades grab him instantly, pressing the weapon back into his grip. He doesn't protest, doesn't even look aware. He just resumes walking, as though the interruption never happened. You marvel at the silence of it all, no words exchanged, no questions asked. It's instinct now. Keep the rifles in their hands. Keep the men on their feet. Keep the march alive. Your head dips once more, and a vision floods your mind. You're back home, kneeling beside your father's workbench. He's polishing a hunting rifle, the smell of oil thick in the air. He shows you how to clean the barrel, how to check the sights. His voice is calm, patient. You remember every word. The warmth of that memory nearly breaks you. You long to stay in it, to let your father's voice carry you to rest. But then the crack of ice under your boot jerks you awake, and Corellia's cold swallows the dream whole. You sigh, bitterly amused. Even your dreams revolve around rifles. Somewhere behind, a man begins to hum. The sound is cracked, faint, almost a whisper. You can't tell if he knows he's doing it. The tune is unrecognizable, but it threads through the silence like a rope. Others hear it too. No one joins in, but the humming lingers, oddly comforting. It feels like a reminder that you're not entirely alone, that even in this nightmare, someone's mind still holds music. The stars blur again, and you think of them as watchful eyes, keeping tally of who survives the night. You imagine one star going dark each time a man collapses in the snow, never to rise. The thought chills you more than the wind. You shake your head, forcing yourself to focus on the rifle's weight. Steel is real. Snow is real. Stars are just lights in the sky. Your lips are cracked, your tongue heavy. You haven't spoken in hours, maybe longer, but you find yourself whispering to your weapon again, like a child clutching a talisman. Just a little longer, you murmur. And in some strange way, the rifle answers not in words, but in the fact that it's still there, still biting into your palms, still keeping you upright, and so you keep moving. Each step a bargain with exhaustion, each breath a fragile defiance against the cold. The rifle, cruel and faithful, remains your partner. You didn't choose it, and it didn't choose you. But together, you march through Corellia's frozen night, proving that sometimes survival doesn't come from strength or glory. Sometimes it comes from refusing to let go of the one thing keeping you upright. The line of men sways like reeds in the wind. From a distance, you might think the whole column is drunk, weaving and bobbing as if the forest itself has put them under a spell. Up close, though, you see the truth. Exhaustion has stripped every man of control. The march is powered not by strength, but by instinct, by sheer refusal to collapse. You see a soldier slump forward suddenly, his knees folding. For a terrible second, it looks like he'll fall face first into the snow. But two comrades are there instantly, one grabbing his arm, the other yanking his rifle back into his frozen hands. The man doesn't protest. His eyes flutter, and he mutters nonsense words as though still dreaming. But he's upright again, and that's all that matters. This is how the march survives, not by individuals, but by the group. Every man's body is failing, but the collective carries itself forward, each soldier becoming a crutch for the others. It's an unspoken pact. No one falls alone. Mainstream fact. Finnish patrols during the Winter War often operated in small units, covering long distances through snow and forest without stopping. These units relied on teamwork to survive. A single man faltering could endanger the mission, so comradeship wasn't just camaraderie, was strategy. You didn't let someone collapse because their survival increased your own. The quirky detail. Veterans recalled propping up comrades who were effectively asleep, walking them like puppets, their rifles stiff in their hands. Some even joked that half the army looked like scarecrows, wobbling in the snow with vacant stares. One man later swore that he carried his friend by the belt for 2 kilometers while the friend slept upright, his head bouncing like a bobblehead toy. Years later, they laughed about it, though neither could remember much of those missing miles. And historians still argue, of course. Did soldiers really sleepwalk like that, or were they hallucinating? Was it a collective myth formed after the war, a way of making sense of memories blurred by fatigue and cold? Some scholars say it's unlikely an entire column could function in such a state. Others counter that extreme conditions create extreme adaptations. The line between myth and reality is blurry, but the accounts are consistent, enough to haunt the record. The silence around you is broken only by the occasional grunt or muffled curse. Every man fights his own private battle against gravity. Your legs feel like lead pipes, each step an effort of will. Your boots crunch through snow that seems deeper with every passing minute. You stop noticing the cold on your skin. Instead, it's the weight of fatigue that overwhelms you. The rifle is your ballast, the only thing tethering you to the world. Your head dips again, and this time, the dream is so vivid it makes you stumble. You're lying in a warm bed, blankets heavy across your chest. A soft lamp glows in the corner. You hear your mother humming, the melody familiar and soothing. It's so real, you almost weep. Then your foot snags on a root, and you jolt upright, nearly falling. The dream shatters, and you're back in Karelia, breath ragged, heart pounding. You curse your brain for its cruelty. Beside you, another man mumbles. His words are jumbled, broken, but you catch fragments. Fireplace, rye bread, milk. His lips move like he's chewing. You wonder if his dream is kinder than yours, if it's feeding him illusions of comfort. You resist the urge to wake him. Better he stays in that dream if it keeps his legs moving. The snow thickens, falling harder now, coating helmets and shoulders in a powder that turns you all into white phantoms. It muffles every sound, making the world even quieter. The column becomes a procession of ghosts drifting through a frozen void. You shiver, though the cold has long since gone past feeling. The rifle presses deeper into your palms, unyielding, unforgiving, yet faithful. You glance at the man ahead of you, noticing how his head bobs forward, his breath rasping. His rifle is angled awkwardly, as though it's carrying him rather than the other way around. And you realize again how many men are surviving only because the weapon in their hands refuses to let them drop. It's grim, absurd, and oddly comforting. Another mainstream fact: Finnish officers were trained to watch for signs of collapse, to force men onward even when they seemed incapable. One memoir recalls a commander slapping soldiers awake, shouting in their faces until they stumbled back into the march. Discipline was survival, and mercy often looked like cruelty. But in the silence of tonight's march, mercy comes in small gestures, an arm hooked under a comrade's elbow, a rifle shoved back into numb hands, a shove forward to keep pace. No one speaks, but the bond is undeniable. The stars overhead flicker, and your vision wavers. For a moment, the snow seems to glow with its own light, and the trees lean inward like cathedral pillars. The whole world feels holy, strange, suspended between dream and reality. You wonder if you're seeing visions, or if exhaustion has simply peeled back the edges of the world. Either way, you march on, guided by something beyond reason. You mutter to yourself, "Don't stop." The words are slurred, muffled by your scarf, but you repeat them with each step. They become your mantra, your anchor. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. And with every repetition, your boots crunch forward, carrying you deeper into the night. In the end, it isn't strength that keeps you moving. It isn't even courage. It's the quiet hands of comrades pulling each other upright, the rifles frozen to palms like cruel lifelines, and the strange, stubborn will not to collapse. Alone, you'd be gone. Together, you march on. Your boots crunch rhythmically against the snow, but the sound no longer feels real. Each step is a mechanical act, a habit your body repeats while your mind drifts elsewhere. And now, the drifting takes a darker turn. You start to see things that aren't there. At first, it's simple. Snowbanks shimmer, their shapes curving into soft pillows, inviting you to sink into them. A tree trunk looks like the frame of a bed, complete with blankets and sheets carved from frost. The illusion is so strong, you actually pause, your body leaning toward it. For a terrifying second, you consider lying down, just for a moment, just to rest. But then a soldier behind bumps into you, muttering under his breath, and the spell is broken. You lurch forward, heart pounding, suddenly aware of how close you came to surrender. These hallucinations creep in more often now. The snow isn't just snow anymore. It becomes bread, steaming loaves stacked in mounds. The trees twist into doorways, promising warmth inside. Even the wind whispers, voices urging you to stop, to lie down, to sleep. You shake your head violently, forcing the illusions away, but they return. Sly and persistent. Mainstream fact: sleep deprivation and hypothermia often trigger hallucinations. During World War II, soldiers on both sides reported seeing things in the snow cabins, campfires, even entire villages that vanished when approached. The Finnish front was no exception. Men in Karelia wrote later about how exhaustion painted false comforts in the forest, luring them toward death. The quirky detail: some veterans admitted they gave names to these hallucinations. One called his phantom bed the white blanket. Another named the glowing cabin he saw grandmother's house. They joked grimly about it later, as if mocking the illusions gave them less power. One soldier swore he waved at his hallucination every night like an old friend, until the march finally ended. But historians disagree on the depth of these visions. Were they truly hallucinations, or just exaggerated memories shaped by storytelling? Some insist they were real experiences, born from the combination of hunger, cold, and lack of sleep. Others argue they were metaphors soldiers used later to describe their suffering. The truth is murky, but standing here in Karelia, half asleep with your rifle burning into your palms, you know the visions are real enough to tempt you. Another man ahead falters. He veers off slightly, his eyes fixed on a snowbank glowing faintly in the moonlight. You know what he sees: a bed, a cabin, a place of rest. Two comrades yank him back roughly, shouting into his face. His eyes clear, and he stumbles back into line, looking dazed. Nobody scolds him. Nobody laughs. Everyone understands. It could have been any of you. The rifle digs into your hands again, a cruel reminder of reality. The cold burns through your gloves, making your palms throb. But that pain is good. Pain keeps you awake. Pain keeps you tethered. You grip tighter, whispering softly, "Stay with me." Your vision blurs once more. This time, the trees bend into the shape of a sauna, steam rising from phantom windows. You hear laughter, your brothers splashing water, your father humming a tune. The pull is overwhelming. You imagine the heat on your skin, the release of tension in your muscles. You take a step toward it before jerking back violently, almost screaming into the night. You can't trust your eyes anymore. You can't trust your brain. Only your rifle. Only the snow under your boots. The silence of the march is broken by a sudden cry. A soldier collapses, his legs folding like paper. For a heartbeat, the column slows. Then hands reach down, hauling him back to his feet, pressing his rifle into his palms. He sways, eyes closed, but somehow keeps walking. The line tightens again, as if the collapse never happened. But in your chest, fear churns. Each stumble is a reminder of how thin the margin is between survival and surrender. Mainstream fact. Many deaths on winter fronts weren't caused by bullets, but by cold. Men who lay down in snow, even for minutes, often never woke. Officers knew it, soldiers knew it, and so every stumble sparked panic. Saving a comrade from the snow wasn't heroism, it was survival. The quirky side of it. Some men developed rituals to fight hallucinations. One swore by biting his tongue until it bled, the pain snapping him back to reality. Another carried a pebble in his pocket, squeezing it whenever he drifted. A few muttered prayers, constantly, like mantras, as though words could keep the visions at bay. Historians still puzzle over how these rituals worked. Were they genuine survival strategies, or just superstitions? Some psychologists suggest they were grounding techniques, anchoring exhausted minds to something tangible. Others argue they were simply distractions. Whatever the case, you find yourself whispering now. Two small words, fragments of memory, curses, anything to hold on. The night stretches endlessly. The snow glows faintly, illusions shimmering at every turn. You glance left, certain you see a cabin with smoke curling from the chimney. You glance right, and there's a bed carved from snow, pillows plump and inviting. You force your eyes down, staring only at your boots. Step, step, step. Don't look, don't listen, don't dream. The rifle anchors you, cruel and cold, but faithful. You focus on its weight, the bite of steel in your palms. As long as you feel that pain, you know you're awake. As long as you hear the crunch of boots behind you, you know you're alive. And so you march on, swaying, dreaming, resisting. The hallucinations circle like wolves, waiting for you to falter. But for now, you keep moving, proving that even when reality bends and blurs, stubbornness alone can hold you upright. The march continues, a silent procession through Karelia's frozen wilderness. You've lost track of how long you've been walking. Hours, days. Time no longer feels like something you can measure. All you know is the rhythm of boots in snow, the hiss of breath in scarves, the rifle locked in your hands like a steel shackle. And in this silence, your mind begins to wander to questions larger than the march itself. What will people say about this? Will they believe it? Years from now, when historians sit in warm libraries and write about this war, will they record the story of soldiers who slept standing up, rifles frozen to their palms? Or will they dismiss it as myth, an exaggeration born of fatigue and memory? Mainstream fact: reports of sleep marches appeared in war diaries and memoirs. Veterans insisted they dreamed while upright, even while walking. Commanders noted men who appeared unconscious but kept pace regardless. These accounts are scattered across multiple sources, too consistent to ignore, and yet debate lingers. Some scholars argue these were microsleeps, fleeting seconds when the brain shuts down, not true dreams. Others think they were hallucinations caused by exhaustion and hypothermia. Still others suggest the stories were shaped later, mythologized into legends of endurance that symbolized Finland's resistance. You wonder which camp will win the argument, and you chuckle softly, because out here, the theory doesn't matter. Whether it's sleep, dream, or hallucination, it's survival. The man ahead of you sways violently, his rifle dips, his knees buckle. You brace for him to fall, but then he steadies, eyes snapping open just in time. His face is pale, lips cracked, but he keeps moving. You recognize the same look you feel on your own face, a mix of fatigue and stubbornness, as if sheer willpower is the only glue holding body and mind together. The rifle presses harder into your palms. It's become your anchor, your curse, and your salvation. Without it, you'd crumble. With it, you endure. You wonder if the weapon knows what role it plays tonight. If it could speak, would it complain about carrying so many men upright? You almost laugh at the thought. A rifle as a caretaker. The absurdity makes you smile beneath your scarf, though your lips split painfully when you do. Your head dips again, and visions creep into the corners of your eyes. This time, you see home. The kitchen table set with bread, butter, and steaming soup. Your mother pouring milk, your father nodding with approval. You're about to sit, your body leaning forward into the dream, when your boot catches a hidden rock. Pain shoots up your leg, snapping you back. The soup vanishes, replaced by snow and darkness. You groan, half angry, half grateful. Another soldier mutters nearby. He's talking to someone who isn't there, his words slurred and broken. His hands grip the rifle like claws, his eyes half shut. You don't wake him. You don't need to. His body is still moving, and that's enough. Out here, you don't demand sanity. You only demand survival. Quirky detail. One veteran later confessed he spent an entire march arguing aloud with an imaginary tax collector. Another swore he saw Soviet soldiers dancing in the tree line, only to blink and find nothing but pines. These stories became jokes in peacetime, soldiers laughing at how absurd exhaustion had made them, but the laughter was tinged with unease, as if mocking the visions made them less terrifying. The column sways on. You begin to think of it less as a group of men and more as a single creature, made of dozens of exhausted bodies stitched together by rifles and stubbornness. Each man is a limb, each rifle a bone, each dream a flicker of shared madness. Together, you stumble forward like some great half-asleep beast trudging across Karelia. Historians argue about whether the Finnish concept of sisu explains this endurance. Was it cultural? Was it biology? Was it myth? Some say sisu is nothing more than a romanticized word, a convenient explanation for survival that could also be attributed to adrenaline and desperation. Others argue sisu is real, something deeper than language, a shared spirit that carried a small nation against impossible odds. You don't know the answer. All you know is that tonight, you're still on your feet. The snow thickens again, flakes swirling, stinging your face. The forest feels endless, every tree identical to the last, as if you're marching in circles. You try not to think about it. You try not to think at all. Thought only tempts hallucinations. Better to keep your eyes on your boots, your palms on the rifle, your breath steady. You whisper softly to yourself, words half prayer, half mantra, one more step. The words fade into the scarf, unheard by anyone else, but they echo in your mind. One more step, one more, one more. It becomes the beat of your heart, the rhythm of your breath. The line marches on. No songs, no speeches, no glory. Just exhaustion, rifles, and the stubborn refusal to fall. Whether historians later call it myth, microsleep, or sisu, you know what it feels like tonight. It feels like madness, like survival, like something between life and death. And still, impossibly, it works. You're still upright. You're still moving. You don't remember how many times you've blinked yourself awake. The march is a blur, stitched together by flashes of clarity and stretches of absence. One moment you're here, crunching through snow. The next you're somewhere else entirely, some dream pulled from memory. Gone before you can grasp it. And yet, strangely, you stay on your feet. The rifle in your hands holds you steady, its frozen steel, a cruel but loyal companion. You tell yourself that as long as you feel that cold bite, you won't fall. You grip it tighter, though your fingers barely move anymore. They've stiffened into claws, welded to the weapon by frost. You wonder, not for the first time, how soldiers on other fronts endured. Did Germans in the east, trudging through Russian winters, fall asleep in their marches too? Did Soviets collapse in the snow, dreaming of bread and warmth just like you? Or is this strange Finnish ritual of upright dreaming unique to Karelia? Mainstream fact, across the Eastern Front, soldiers in every army suffered exhaustion so severe that collapse was common. German accounts describe men falling asleep in trenches, even while shells exploded overhead. Soviet diaries tell of soldiers curling into snowbanks mid-march, never rising again. But what set the Finns apart was the eerie discipline columns that swayed but rarely broke. Men who somehow remained upright even when their minds drifted. The quirky detail. Some Finns claimed later that they could nap on their skis while sliding downhill. Eyes shut, bodies leaning instinctively. Others swore they marched in dreams so vivid that they returned to consciousness with no memory of kilometers covered. We were ghosts, one veteran said. Ghosts with rifles for bodies. Historians debate whether these comparisons are fair. Were the Finns truly different, or did they simply tell the story differently? Some argue that Finnish culture built on endurance, winter, and the concept of sisu framed their suffering in a particular way, turning hardship into legend. Others suggest soldiers everywhere experienced the same delirium, but only the Finns described it as standing sleep. The march goes on. The snow crunches, the wind hisses, and every sound feels amplified by silence. You focus on it because it's real. Dreams and hallucinations come and go, but the sound of boots in snow is undeniable. Crunch, crunch, crunch gets the heartbeat of the column. Steady and relentless. Your head dips again, and this time you find yourself dreaming of spring. The ice has melted, rivers run free, and you're fishing in calm waters. The sun is warm, and you laugh with your brothers as the line tugs. It's so real that your lips twitch into a smile. Then your rifle slips slightly in your grip, and the jolt pulls you back. The river vanishes. The cold returns. Your smile cracks, splitting your lips. Beside you, another man mutters, his words half nonsense. Almost there, he whispers. Almost home. His eyes are closed, but his legs keep moving. You don't correct him. You don't tell him that home is still 1,000 kilometers away, if it exists at all. Out here, lies are kinder than truth. The forest opens briefly, and the moonlight pours across the snow. The entire column glitters, rifles frosted white, helmets dusted with flakes, eyes glazed. You imagine how it must look to an outsider, an army of phantoms trudging silently across a silver plain, swaying but unbroken. The sight is both majestic and terrifying. Your hands throb. The pain is distant now, dulled by numbness. You wonder if you'll ever feel your fingers again, but you cling to the rifle anyway, because it's proof you're alive. You can't let go, not now, not ever. A mainstream fact flickers through your tired mind. In Karelia, frostbite casualties sometimes rivaled combat losses. Fingers, toes, even ears were sacrificed to the cold. And yet, men marched on, unwilling to let injury break the line. A soldier without fingers could still hold a rifle if it was frozen to him. That was enough, the quirky detail. Some men treated their rifles as living things, talking to them like friends or pets. One veteran recalled stroking the stock as though soothing a horse. Another said he thanked his weapon each morning for keeping him upright through the night. They laughed about it later, but in the frozen dark, those conversations may have been the only voices keeping them sane. Historians shake their heads at such tales. Were they literal or symbolic? Were men truly befriending their rifles, or just explaining survival in metaphor? It's impossible to say, but you know, standing here with steel biting into your palms, that the bond is real. In this moment, your rifle is as alive as you are. You whisper again, just one more step. The words are cracked, almost inaudible, but they echo in your skull, a mantra that replaces thought. You don't think about tomorrow, or even the next hour. You think only of the next step. That's all survival is now. One step, then another, then another. The march stretches onward. Snow swirls, stars blur, rifles groan under frost. The line of men sways, dreams, stumbles, recovers. You're part of it, one figure among many, caught between wakefulness and sleep, life and death, and still, impossibly, you march. The night is so long, it feels like it has no end. The stars blur overhead, cold fires burning without warmth, and you begin to think the sky itself is frozen. Your breath fogs in front of you, and even that seems sluggish, as though the air resents being disturbed. Each exhale is proof you're alive, but each inhale feels like swallowing glass. Your body runs on fumes now. Muscles move without permission, legs carrying you forward on habit alone. You don't decide to march anymore, you simply do. The rhythm of boots on snow has replaced thought. Crunch, crunch, crunch. If the line stopped, you might collapse, but as long as it moves, you move. Time becomes meaningless. Minutes vanish into hours, or hours shrink into moments you can't tell which. You slip in and out of awareness, your mind flickering like a lantern in the wind. Sometimes you're fully awake, teeth clenched, palms burning against the rifle. Other times, you're somewhere else entirely, lost in dreams that arrive uninvited. Tonight's dream is simple. You're walking through a summer meadow. Grass brushes your knees, insects hum, and sunlight pours over your face. It's so vivid, you almost cry, but the dream doesn't last. Your rifle shifts suddenly in your hands, and the shock of pain drags you back to Karelia. The meadow vanishes, replaced by endless snow and darkness. Mainstream fact. Soldiers in Karelia often marched more than 30 kilometers in a single night, skiing or trudging across terrain that would exhaust even fresh men in warm weather. Hunger, cold, and fatigue turned each kilometer into an ordeal. Commanders knew men were slipping into unconsciousness even as they walked, but the marches had to continue. Stopping was worse. The quirky detail. Some soldiers later admitted they learned to borrow time by dozing with their eyes open. They claimed they could dream for a few seconds without breaking stride, the way a bird rests mid-flight. Others insisted they held conversations with comrades who weren't there, imaginary partners who marched beside them. These confessions sound absurd in peacetime, but in the frozen dark, they made perfect sense, and the debate continues, of course. Historians argue over whether such feats are possible. Can a man truly dream while marching? Or are these tales exaggerations, polished into folklore? Some psychologists suggest microsleep explains it, brief moments of unconsciousness, stitched together into the illusion of longer dreams. Others doubt even microsleep could occur in such hostile conditions, but you know better. You've lived it. The visions, the drifting, the swaying, they're not myths. They're survival. You blink hard, staring at the soldier in front of you. His rifle is angled slightly, his head lolling, but he doesn't fall. His body seems balanced on some invisible thread, swaying but never toppling. You realize that if he collapsed, you'd probably stumble into him, and the chain reaction could take down several men at once. That fear alone keeps you upright. You will not be the first domino. The rifle presses deeper into your hands. You no longer feel fingers, just pressure, just weight. The steel has become part of you now, an extension of bone and skin. You whisper to it again, absurdly, like speaking to a friend. Keep me here. The snow deepens. Your boots sink with each step, pulling free only with effort. The sound is loud in your ears. Crunch, drag, crunch. You start counting them 1, 2, 3, 4, using numbers as anchors. When you reach 100, you begin again. The counting distracts you from dreams, keeps your brain tethered just enough to the march. Beside you, another man stumbles. His eyes are closed, mouth open, breath rattling. He looks like a corpse propped on skis. For a moment, you're sure he's gone, but then he coughs, straightens, and continues without a word. You marvel at the body's stubborn refusal to quit. Even when the mind abandons ship, the body trudges on. Mainstream fact. Frostbite claimed countless fingers, toes, and ears on both sides of the front. Yet soldiers often joked about it, as if humor could blunt the fear. Some Finns teased each other about lending fingers to the cold, promising to get them back in spring. It was gallows humor, but it worked. It gave suffering a language that made it bearable. The quirky side. Some claimed they could hear frostbite. They swore their toes crackled, their fingers snapped like tiny branches breaking inside their boots. Whether real or imagined, the description lingered in memoirs, a detail too strange to invent. Historians debate whether those accounts were literal or metaphorical. Could men really sense their bodies freezing in such detail? Or was it just a way of describing numbness? No one knows for sure, but as you wiggle your toes, praying you can still feel them, you think the stories might be true. The forest presses closer, trees looming like black walls. Shadows flicker in your peripheral vision, shapes that vanish when you look directly. You know they're not real, but the temptation to believe is strong. You mutter your mantra again, one more step. Each repetition steadies you. The march is no longer just about reaching camp or avoiding the enemy. It's about defying the simple truth that sleep would mean death. Your comrades sway, stumble, mutter, laugh at phantoms, but they keep moving, and so do you. Whatever historians decide later, whether they call it myth, microsleep, or madness, you know the reality of this night. The rifle in your hands, the snow under your boots, the stubborn refusal to fall. This is survival, raw and absurd. And so, step by step, half dreaming and half dead, you keep marching through Karelia's frozen dark. At last, after what feels like centuries of trudging, a faint change touches the air. You can't explain it at first. It isn't warmer, it isn't brighter, but something shifts. The column stirs, men lifting their heads slightly, as if they sense it too. The endless rhythm of boots crunching in snow continues, but beneath it there's a whisper of relief. Camp is near. You don't dare celebrate. Not yet. The distance between almost there and actually there can be lethal. How many times have you dreamed of reaching camp only to blink awake, still marching in the dark? Still, hope is a dangerous spark, and once it catches, it burns. You feel your legs quicken, despite their heaviness, dragging you toward the promise of rest. The first sign is smoke. Not warm smoke from chimneys, these are thin, faint wisps from campfires, smothered low. They rise into the black sky like signals, marking safety at last. You inhale sharply, and the smell of wood smoke filters through your frozen scarf. It cuts through the stench of sweat and frost, a reminder that something human still exists in this wilderness. The men around you notice too. Their eyes brighten, their posture stiffens. Some mutter thanks under their breath, words lost to the wind. One even laughs, a short, cracked sound that echoes strangely in the silent forest. The column pushes forward, spurred by the invisible hand of hope. Mainstream fact. Finnish soldiers often camped in rough bivouacs rather than proper tents. They built lean-tos, dug snow shelters, or huddled near fires smothered to reduce visibility. These camps were far from comfortable, but after endless marches, they felt like heaven. Even a patch of ground and a smoldering fire could mean life instead of death. The quirky detail. Some veterans swore the smell of campfire was more powerful than food in reviving them. One said he could march another 10 kilometers on the strength of smoke alone, as if his body believed the fire had already warmed him. Others recalled collapsing right at the camp's edge, unable to take another step, and waking later with snow crusted over their coats, their comrades having simply stepped around them. And again, the scholars debate. Were these last-mile collapses a real pattern, or just the dramatic flare of memory? Some historians argue exhaustion naturally peaks when relief is near, making collapse more likely. Others think the stories became symbols, dramatized into legend. You don't have the luxury of debating. You only know you're desperate not to fall before you see the fire. The camp comes into view at last, shapes in the snow, figures moving slowly, sparks flickering in the dark. Relief floods your chest, but it's too much, too fast. Your knees buckle suddenly, and you stagger, nearly falling into the snow. Panic surges. If you go down now, you may not get up again. You grit your teeth, press the rifle harder into your palms, and force yourself upright. The column enters the bivouac, and men begin collapsing like marionettes with their strings cut. They don't even try to sit properly. They fall against logs, slump into drifts, drop onto packs. Some are still gripping rifles, frozen to their hands, unable to let go, even when they want to. The scene is eerie, a graveyard of exhausted figures, alive but motionless. You stumble toward a half-dug snow shelter, where a faint fire flickers under branches. The heat is weak, barely enough to thaw frost from your scarf, but it's real. You crouch, lower your rifle, and feel resistance. The weapon doesn't want to leave your palms. You tug, and pain lances through your fingers as frozen fabric rips from metal. You hiss, but the relief of setting it down is indescribable. For the first time in hours, your body isn't locked upright, mainstream fact. Men often collapsed the moment they reached camp, too exhausted to eat. Officers had to force them to swallow bites of bread or spoonfuls of thin stew before letting them sleep. Otherwise, they risked dying in the night, bodies too weak to recover. Quirky detail, soldiers joked that the campfire stew tasted like glue and ashes, but they devoured it anyway. Some remembered gnawing frozen bread so hard it chipped teeth. Others swore the best part of camp wasn't food at all, it was steam rising from wet boots thawed near the fire, the smell as comforting as perfume. You slump against the wall of the shelter, your body trembling as warmth seeps slowly back into you. Your comrades are sprawled nearby, some asleep already, their rifles still in hand. You can't help but chuckle softly at the sight. The very weapons that tortured you through the night are still clutched like comfort objects, unwillingly cherished even in rest. Historians may argue forever about whether Finnish soldiers truly slept while standing. But tonight, as you watch men collapse into snow, still gripping rifles that kept them upright, you know the truth isn't found in books or debates. It's here, in the raw reality of bodies that endured the impossible only to collapse at the finish line. You pull your scarf lower, inhale the faint warmth of the fire, and let your eyes drift closed. Sleep is no longer forbidden. Sleep is salvation. You sleep so deeply, you don't remember closing your eyes. One moment you're leaning against the shelter wall, breath clouding in front of you. The next you're gone, swallowed whole by exhaustion. When you wake, it's not because your body is ready, but because the cold has crept in again, reminding you where you are. The fire has burned low, reduced to embers, and snow drifts through the cracks of the shelter. Around you, men are sprawled in every position imaginable. Some lie flat, mouths open, steam puffing with each snore. Others slump sitting up, rifles still locked in their hands, as though even in rest they cannot let go. A few twitch and mutter, trapped in dreams. You wonder what they're seeking: warmth, families, or just more snow. Your own dream was merciful. You remember heat, the heavy air of a sauna, the sound of water hissing on rocks. For a few blissful moments, you had been weightless, floating in steam. Waking is cruel. The cold cuts deeper than before, made sharper by the contrast of warmth still clinging to your memory. Mainstream fact: when soldiers finally slept after forced marches, their bodies often betrayed them. Frostbite worsened, circulation slowed, and many awoke in worse condition than before. Commanders urged men to eat and keep fires alive, but exhaustion often overpowered orders. Whole groups risked slipping into permanent sleep if they weren't roused. The quirky detail: some soldiers said their dreams after marches were more vivid than any they had in normal life. They dreamed in color, in taste, in smell. Whole banquets, family gatherings, hunts in summer forests. One veteran swore he could smell frying butter in a dream so strongly that when he woke, he searched the camp for the source. Of course, there was nothing but thin soup bubbling in a pot. Historians argue over these dream accounts. Were they simply intensified by hunger and cold? Were the memories exaggerated after the war, polished into anecdotes? Or did deprivation truly make the brain spark in unusual ways, giving starving, frozen men dreams more real than reality? The debate lingers, but in your bones you feel the truth. Deprivation heightens everything. Hunger sharpens, cold exaggerates, exhaustion paints dreams in colors brighter than life. The snow deepens. Your boots sink with each step, pulling free only with effort. The sound is loud in your ears. Crunch, drag, crunch. You start counting them 1, 2, 3, 4, using numbers as anchors. When you reach 100, you begin again. The counting distracts you from dreams, keeps your brain tethered just enough to the march. Beside you, another man stumbles. His eyes are closed, mouth open, breath rattling. He looks like a corpse propped on skis. For a moment, you're sure he's gone. But then he coughs, straightens, and continues without a word. You marvel at the body's stubborn refusal to quit. Even when the mind abandons ship, the body trudges on. Mainstream fact. Frostbite claimed countless fingers, toes, and ears on both sides of the front. Yet soldiers often joked about it, as if humor could blunt the fear. Some Finns teased each other about lending fingers to the cold, promising to get them back in spring. It was gallows humor, but it worked. It gave suffering a language that made it bearable. The quirky side. Some claimed they could hear frostbite. They swore their toes crackled, their fingers snapped like tiny branches breaking inside their boots. Whether real or imagined, the description lingered in memoirs, a detail too strange to invent. Historians debate whether those accounts were literal or metaphorical. Could men really sense their bodies freezing in such detail? Or was it just a way of describing numbness? No one knows for sure, but as you wiggle your toes, praying you can still feel them, you think the stories might be true. The forest presses closer, trees looming like black walls. Shadows flicker in your peripheral vision, shapes that vanish when you look directly. You know they're not real, but the temptation to believe is strong. You mutter your mantra again, one more step. Each repetition steadies you. The march is no longer just about reaching camp or avoiding the enemy. It's about defying the simple truth that sleep would mean death. Your comrades sway, stumble, mutter, laugh at phantoms, but they keep moving, and so do you. Whatever historians decide later, whether they call it myth, microsleep, or madness, you know the reality of this night. The rifle in your hands, the snow under your boots, the stubborn refusal to fall. This is survival, raw and absurd. And so, step by step, half dreaming and half dead, you keep marching through Karelia's frozen dark. At last, after what feels like centuries of trudging, a faint change touches the air. You can't explain it at first. It isn't warmer, it isn't brighter, but something shifts. The column stirs, men lifting their heads slightly, as if they sense it too. The endless rhythm of boots crunching in snow continues, but beneath it there's a whisper of relief. Camp is near. You don't dare celebrate. Not yet. The distance between almost there and actually there can be lethal. How many times have you dreamed of reaching camp only to blink awake, still marching in the dark? Still, hope is a dangerous spark, and once it catches, it burns. You feel your legs quicken despite their heaviness, dragging you toward the promise of rest. The first sign is smoke. Not warm smoke from chimneys, these are thin, faint wisps from campfires, smothered low. They rise into the black sky like signals, marking safety at last. You inhale sharply, and the smell of wood smoke filters through your frozen scarf. It cuts through the stench of sweat and frost, a reminder that something human still exists in this wilderness. The men around you notice too. Their eyes brighten, their posture stiffens. Some mutter thanks under their breath, words lost to the wind. One even laughs, a short, cracked sound that echoes strangely in the silent forest. The column pushes forward, spurred by the invisible hand of hope. mainstream fact. Finnish soldiers often camped in rough bivouacs rather than proper tents. They built lean-tos, dug snow shelters, or huddled near fires smothered to reduce visibility. These camps were far from comfortable, but after endless marches, they felt like heaven. Even a patch of ground and a smoldering fire could mean life instead of death. The quirky detail: some veterans swore the smell of campfire was more powerful than food in reviving them. One said he could march another 10 kilometers on the strength of smoke alone, as if his body believed the fire had already warmed him. Others recalled collapsing right at the camp's edge, unable to take another step, and waking later with snow crusted over their coats, their comrades having simply stepped around them. And again, the scholars debate: were these last-mile collapses a real pattern, or just the dramatic flair of memory? Some historians argue exhaustion naturally peaks when relief is near, making collapse more likely. Others think the stories became symbols, dramatized into legend. You don't have the luxury of debating. You only know you're desperate not to fall before you see the fire. The camp comes into view at last, shapes in the snow, figures moving slowly, sparks flickering in the dark. Relief floods your chest, but it's too much, too fast. Your knees buckle suddenly, and you stagger, nearly falling into the snow. Panic surges. If you go down now, you may not get up again. You grit your teeth, press the rifle harder into your palms, and force yourself upright. The column enters the bivouac, and men begin collapsing like marionettes with their strings cut. They don't even try to sit properly. They fall against logs, slump into drifts, drop onto packs. Some are still gripping rifles, frozen to their hands, unable to let go, even when they want to. The scene is eerie, a graveyard of exhausted figures, alive but motionless. You stumble toward a half-dug snow shelter, where a faint fire flickers under branches. The heat is weak, barely enough to thaw frost from your scarf, but it's real. You crouch, lower your rifle, and feel resistance. The weapon doesn't want to leave your palms. You tug, and pain lances through your fingers as frozen fabric rips from metal. You hiss, but the relief of setting it down is indescribable. For the first time in hours, your body isn't locked upright, mainstream fact. Men often collapsed the moment they reached camp, too exhausted to eat. Officers had to force them to swallow bites of bread or spoonfuls of thin stew before letting them sleep. You shift, your joints stiff, your palms aching where the rifle tore away fabric and skin. The pain is dull now, but the memory of the weapon frozen to your hands lingers. You glance around. Several comrades still clutch theirs in sleep, unable or unwilling to put them down. One man lies on his side, his rifle hugged to his chest like a child's toy. You almost laugh, but stop yourself. The sight is too sad, too human. The camp is quiet. Only the crackle of the dying fire breaks the silence. Outside, the forest looms, indifferent. You pull your coat tighter, wishing for another blanket, another layer. The thought of home slips in again, thick quilts, a feather mattress, the sound of rain against the window. You close your eyes, but this time the dream doesn't come. Only the cold remains. Mainstream fact: the Finnish army relied heavily on ingenuity to survive nights like this. Soldiers built lean-tos from branches, dug snow caves to trap heat, even stripped bark for insulation. It was never enough, but it bought time, sometimes just enough to see another morning. The quirky detail: men swore by odd trick-swarming boots, by stuffing them with hot stones, sleeping with mittens tucked into armpits, even lying in pairs for shared warmth. Some joked about becoming bears, burrowing into snowbanks to sleep. The jokes weren't far from the truth. Snow, though deadly, could insulate better than air. Historians debate whether camaraderie or innovation mattered more in these camps. Was it the shared will of men looking after one another that saved lives, or was it the clever survival tricks passed from soldier to soldier? Likely both. You know that without the man who shoved you forward when you nearly collapsed, you wouldn't be here. Survival is never solitary. The fire crackles lower. You stir, knowing someone should feed it, but your body protests. Every limb feels like stone. You glance at the man beside you. His eyes are closed, his breath steady. You reach for a branch anyway, push it into the coals, and watch sparks leap. The glow reflects faintly in the snow-silvered shelter. It's pitiful, but it's something. You lean back again, head heavy. Around you, men dream, some smiling faintly, others frowning. Their minds still caught between Karelia's cold and warmer memories. You wonder if the dreams will be remembered years later, retold in taverns and interviews. Maybe they'll be dismissed as exaggerations. Maybe they'll be believed. But you know their truth tonight. Dreams are all you have when the cold tries to take everything else. The rifle lies by your side now. But even in sleep, you keep one hand near it, as if afraid it might wander off without you. The absurdity isn't lost on you. You curse it. You cling to it. You dream of freedom from it. Yet you won't let it go. That's war in Karelia. Contradictions frozen into steel and bone. You close your eyes again. This time, the dream is faint shadows of warmth, echoes of voices. Not as sharp as before, but enough. You let it carry you, trusting the fire, the shelter, and the silent promise of your comrades that no one will be left to freeze alone. Years later, long after Karelia's forests have quieted and the rifles have rusted, the memories remain. Veterans sit in dim kitchens, steam curling from coffee mugs, their voices low and steady as they recall the nights when they marched half asleep, rifles frozen to their palms. The stories come slowly at first, but once one man speaks, others nod, smile faintly, and add their own. They describe the same scene you lived. Columns of soldiers swaying in silence, eyes half closed, bodies carried forward by instinct more than will. They talk about the rifles, how the steel fused to skin, how the pain was both torment and salvation. Some laugh as they tell it, grim humor softening what was once unbearable. Others shake their heads, still bewildered at how they survived. Mainstream fact. Oral histories collected after the Winter War and continuation. War are filled with these accounts. Veterans often focused less on battles than on endurance, how hunger, cold, and exhaustion shaped their war as much as bullets and shells. The marches became symbols of Finnish resilience, retold in memoirs and interviews as proof that the nation endured because its soldiers endured. The quirky detail, many veterans remembered not just the suffering, but the absurdity. One chuckled about dreaming of milking cows while trudging through the snow, waking with his hands clawed around the rifle as if tugging at an udder. Another swore he tasted licorice in his mouth, though he hadn't seen candy in months. Some even recalled scolding themselves in dreams, voices in their heads, telling them to keep walking. These memories blurred the line between pain and comedy, turning agony into stories that audiences decades later could laugh at with them. But historians remain divided. Some argue these tales reflect the selective memory of old men, reshaped by time and storytelling. Perhaps they exaggerated for effect, turning ordinary fatigue into myth. Others point to the consistency of the accounts. The sheer number of soldiers who described the same eerie half-sleep is evidence that it was real. However unbelievable it sounds, the debate continues in books and articles, but the veterans don't bother with theories. For them, truth is found in memory, not in academic arguments. You imagine those veterans now. One stirs his coffee and says, "I remember my rifle carrying me." Another adds, "I dreamed of my wife every step." Their voices overlap, weaving the same tapestry of exhaustion, hallucination, and stubborn will. They don't describe glory or victory, they describe survival. That's the story they want remembered. You glance down at your hands, still raw where the rifle bit into them. The scars will remain, faint reminders etched into skin. Maybe one day, decades from now, you'll sit in your own kitchen and tell your children about that night. You'll smile when you describe the rifle that wouldn't let go, the snowbanks that looked like featherbeds, the dreams of bread so real you woke chewing air. They'll laugh, and maybe they won't fully believe you, but you'll know it was true. The camp around you stirs. Men shift in their sleep, some waking groggily, others muttering as dreams slip away. A few stare into the fire, eyes glazed, reliving the march even while awake. No one speaks much. There's no need. The experience is shared, and words cannot capture it fully anyway. Mainstream fact, decades later, Finnish culture elevated these stories as part of the national memory of the war. Books, plays, and films portrayed the soldiers as embodiments of sisu, their endurance legendary. But in private, veterans often downplayed their own roles, insisting they had simply done what was necessary. Quirky detail, some veterans admitted. They never told their families the full truth. They spoke of battles, of victories, of comrades lost, but not of the nights spent dreaming on their feet. They said it was too strange, too unbelievable. Only when they gathered with other veterans did the stories surface, shared with laughter and quiet nods. And historians, they continue to sift through these accounts, debating their accuracy, weighing the line between memory and myth. Did men truly sleep upright? Did rifles really freeze so tightly to hands that they acted as anchors? Scholars argue, but you already know the answer. Truth is not always clean or measurable. Sometimes, truth is simply what 100 men remember together. The fire crackles low. You close your eyes, the echoes of those future voices already forming in your mind. Someday, people will ask, "How did you survive?" And you'll answer not with tales of strategy or weapons, but with the simple, absurd truth: we slept standing, rifles frozen to our hands, and somehow we kept walking. Morning comes slowly in Karelia. There's no sunrise, no gentle warmth creeping across the snow. Instead, the sky lightens from black to gray, a dull wash that makes the forest look even colder. You blink awake, groggy, stiff, unsure if you ever truly slept. Your body feels broken, hands raw, back aching, feet numbed. You're alive. Around you, men stir in similar states, groaning softly, clutching rifles that seem welded to their palms. The camp is a frozen tableau. Fires smoke weakly, snow piles against lean-tos, rifles lean awkwardly against branches. The men look like statues dusted in frost, every movement slow and tentative. No one speaks much. There's nothing to say. You survived the march, survived the night, survived another impossible test. That is enough. You glance at your rifle. The steel is still frosted, its weight familiar, oppressive, comforting. You flex your fingers, wincing as torn skin stretches. The weapon feels less like an object now and more like an extension of yourself. For hours, It held you upright when your body wanted to collapse. For hours, it anchored you to life. You hate it. You thank it. You cannot let it go. Mainstream fact. Veterans often described their rifles as both burdens and lifelines. They cursed the weight, the cold, the endless responsibility. Yet they admitted that without those rifles, many would not have survived the marches. The contradiction became part of the myth guns, not only as weapons, but as guardians against collapse. The quirky detail. Some soldiers swore their rifles had personalities. One called his old mule because it carried him as much as he carried it. Another referred to his as the wife, a cruel joke about a partner who never let him rest. These nicknames, absurd as they sound, helped men endure, giving humor to something otherwise unbearable. Historians, of course, dissect these stories. Were the rifles truly lifelines, or just symbols in memory? Was the standing sleep real, or an exaggeration retold for decades until it became fact? The debates fill books and articles, scholars weighing psychology, physiology, and folklore. But you know the answer isn't found in arguments. It's found here, in Karelia, in the lived experience of men who swayed through the night, eyes closed, rifles frozen to their hands. You rise stiffly, stretching sore muscles. Around you, comrades do the same, some limping, some groaning, all carrying the same hollow exhaustion. Yet there's pride, too unspoken but present. You endured. You didn't collapse into the snow. You're still here. That's victory enough. Another march will come tonight. You know it already. The war doesn't pause for rest. There will be more columns, more rifles frozen to hands, more dreams of beds and saunas. And perhaps, years from now, there will be more arguments about whether those dreams were real. But for now, in this fragile morning, survival is the only truth you need. You sit, rifle across your lap, breath fogging in the gray light. The memories of last night are already blurring, slipping into that strange space between dream and reality. Did you really see cabins in the snow? Did you really hear phantom music? Did you really sleep while walking? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you kept moving. What matters is that you endured. Mainstream fact. Finland, though outnumbered and outgunned, endured in the Winter War and Continuation War far longer than anyone expected. The endurance of its soldiers, their ability to survive impossible marches and punishing cold, became part of national identity. These stories, however strange, embodied that resilience, quirky detail, even decades later. Veterans joked about the marches. We were like horses, one laughed. We could sleep standing. Maybe we grew hooves. Another said, my rifle married me in Karelia. I never divorced it. The jokes softened the memories, turning horror into humor. And historians, they'll never settle the debate completely. Some truths aren't meant to be dissected. Some truths live only in the memory of those who were there. You run your hand along the rifle's stock, sighing. We did it, you whisper. Not to yourself, but to the weapon that carried you, cursed you, saved you. The forest doesn't answer. The wind doesn't care. But the truth lingers. You survived because you refused to stop. Because your comrades held you up. Because even in dreams, your legs kept moving. And that's how Finnish soldiers could sleep standing with frozen rifles in their hands. Not because it made sense, not because it was easy, but because survival demanded the impossible, and somehow, impossibly, you delivered. The march is over now. The rifles are set down, the fires burn low, and the forest grows quiet again. You've seen enough snow, enough cold, enough exhaustion for one night. The memories of men swaying in silence, dreaming while upright, will stay with you, but for now, they can fade into the background. Let yourself imagine warmth instead. Not the brittle heat of a fire struggling in the wind, but the deep, steady warmth of a room safe from winter. Imagine blankets tucked around you, soft and heavy. Imagine the steady hum of a stove, the glow of lamplight casting gentle shadows on the wall. Outside, the snow may still fall, but inside, you're safe. Inside, you can rest. Your breathing slows. The rhythm of boots in snow crunch, 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 becomes a lullaby now, not a burden. Each sound is softer, fading into nothing. The rifle in your hands is gone. There is no weight, no pain, no frostbite, only stillness, only comfort. You've walked far enough. You've endured enough. Tonight, you don't need to keep moving. Tonight, you can surrender not to the snow, but to rest. So close your eyes. Let the memories blur. Let Karelia's cold forest dissolve into something gentler. You're not marching anymore. You're safe, you're warm, and the night is quiet.